Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Marqui webinar. Are you being served? Today, we're going to talk about service enrichment and the CMS marketplace. I'm going to talk a little bit about different kinds of CMS that you might encounter, some of the feature sets available within those CMS, and what the ecosystem looks like. And then I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the way that Marqui does CMS. If you attended our last webinar, you'll remember I mentioned service-enriched CMS as a sort of a concept that we're really champions of here at Marqui. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how it might work in practice, a little more detail about that. Before we get started, though, I want to talk just a little bit about the webinar that we're using. So we're using GoToWebinar. If you haven't used it before, it's a really simple interface. Just click that little orange arrow to get your interface out of the way. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, there will be time at the end for us to go over them. So don't be shy. Pop open the interface there, throw your questions in the questions box, and we'll attend to them once we get to the end. So the webinar today should take us to about 11:30 Pacific, so about 35 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So before we get into the content, I want to talk a little bit about myself. That's me. My name is Adam Koval. I'm the manager of digital services here at Marqui. I've been on the Marqui team for almost as long as anyone. I've been around since 2007. Right now, my main focus is that digital services piece. So we talk about things like client success, account management, strategy and execution, and I organize a team here at Marqui that's responsible for taking new clients and getting them ready with Marqui. It's a very sort of teaching-focused job, which is why I'm the one here delivering the webinar. So, I'm in charge of training, in charge of onboarding. I'll talk a little bit about what onboarding might look like in a CMS space later on, and campaign strategy and execution for our clients. So just a little bit of background information there for you. So let's talk about you. How did you get here? So you're probably attending this webinar as the result of an invitation from us by email. You can see on the right there an invitation to our email system. And there's a landing page that you would have filled out to register for the webinar. Now, you might have gotten this email as part of our newsletter list, as part of a sign up from our last webinar. You're interested in getting more information. However you ended up in the system, you're now part of a larger ecosystem of campaigns, of emails, of targeted content. And I want to sort of pull the curtain back at the end, right before we finish off, and show you exactly how we are engaging our leads, engaging folks with information about Marqui. This webinar is just one piece of a larger whole that I'd love to show off to you at the end. So, just to start with the real basics, and this is something that, if you're using a content management system already, if you're familiar with it, then this is all going to be old hat to you. But for some folks, CMS is new territory. If you've worked with an agency for your entire sort of website's lifespan, if you've got internal developers on your IT team that have built and managed your website, this idea of a CMS might be new to you. So to sum up kind of what a CMS is about, it stands for Content Management System. It's generally a piece of software that's used by marketers, IT professionals, webmasters, content creators at an organization. Now, there's starting to be a big shift. And we've got a great blog post about this, about sort of ownership coming up. But the idea is that in the past, traditionally, the web was seen as a very technical place. And more as time goes on, marketers are taking control of that space, and content management systems are allowing them to do that. So now, a marketing team without a lot of technical or development knowledge can create, they can manage, they can publish content for the web, whether it's a landing page, a full website, as ambitious as they want to get. The control is moving now to that marketing space. And content management systems are available in a lot of different, we'll say, flavors, different modes. You might hear terms like open source or proprietary, pre-built or custom coded. You'll hear something about SaaS or enterprise. I'm going to try and clear up some of that stuff for you today. And I want to start by looking at the three sort of major categories of content management system. Now, the first two are old terms. They've been around for as long as the technology has. And the third is something that we're really standing behind at Marqui as a front runner. This is sort of the new way of looking at content management. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about proprietary CMS. So now a proprietary CMS, this is what we would call kind of the old school of content management system. It's a tool whose code, whose infrastructure and architecture is generally the property, the intellectual property of the company that created it. So, we're talking about, in a traditional model, someone built a piece of software and you're buying it from them. Maybe you're licensing it if they're in a SaaS model, but generally, they have this thing and now you're using it. You don't get to manage the code. There's not a lot of flexibility necessarily, but it's stable. It's stable and secure. You're getting a finished full product. And a proprietary CMS, it has the advantage of that security, that you only have one person to go to. But depending on the size of the company that built the proprietary CMS, you may have better or worse engagement in terms of support. So, it might be an outsourced support situation. It might be a user-based support situation. Generally, with a proprietary CMS, the tool itself is quite stable, but the support offering can vary pretty heavily. Proprietary, you might also hear it referred to as a closed system, or sometimes it gets conflated with an enterprise or an on-premise, but we'll talk about delivery in a little bit. So the flip side, the other end of the scale from proprietary CMS is a type of software called open source. Now, this is it's been a buzz, depending on the circles that you kind of travel in. It's a buzzword you hear on the internet a lot. Open source is generally sort of championed as this free to use, wide open marketplace. It's sort of the Wild West of code, because someone or someone's, generally it's a community, developed the software, built it for use, and set it free on the internet. So there's licensing, depending on the versions of the software you're looking at. There's various types of licensing. Sometimes there's a fee, generally there isn't. It's got a wide marketplace of people building add-ons, customized functionality, but it's a lot less, not stable necessarily, but a lot less reliable in terms of what you're getting. You have to engage these third parties for plugins or add-ons. There's infrastructure involved that you have to deal with yourself, which is great if you have development capability in-house or you're engaging an agency. Someone working for you to build this infrastructure that you want to build your website on, this content management system for you from these open source pieces. And if you've got that support, if you've got that in place, or the budget for it, then you're good to go. Right? You can go with this open source, and you'll have a lot of opportunity to sort of mess with it. And there's a slide a little later on where I'm going to address, how each of these types of CMS might fit a particular kind of business. So if you're wondering, what's the best type of CMS for me, we'll look at that in the end. So stick around. So the third category, and to be completely transparent, this is really something that we're starting to see more of, primarily because it's something that at Marqui we're really championing. It's a type of CMS that kind of bridges the gap between the two, and and we're not shy to say that Marqui fits into this model. So we're fairly proud of it. So a service-enriched CMS is proprietary from the software level. It has the stability and the build focus of a proprietary piece of software. Using Marqui as an example, we do all of our development here in-house. We don't outsource to a third party. But the way that we architect the software, the way that a service-enriched CMS should be architected, is with a user-empowered outlook. So the idea is that we want to build a tool that has the stability of a proprietary system with the flexibility and the user empowerment of an open source system. So that regardless of what the level of your user skill is, if you've got someone who has trouble making a Word document on one end and you've got a coder on the other, we want to be able to supply a tool, and the service enrichment model sort of applies to this. We want to apply a tool that allows anyone to use the software regardless of their level of skill without feeling like their hands are And the way that we go into that, the way that a service-enriched CMS functions is by supporting itself with a fully featured service offering. So there are people in the company that make and sell the software that are capable of executing on it as well. We'll talk a little bit about the services side of this kind of business in a little bit, but what you're looking at is a modular tool with modular licensing designed to grow with your business. You're not setting in stone the next 5 years of your digital marketing by buying a CMS. You don't want to be tied into that model if you want to change along the way. So modularity, obviously really important to service enrichment. And to support that, the software as a service, the SaaS licensing, really helps support that technology. So what we're really trying to do with service-enriched CMS is create a best of both worlds approach. You get the good sides of both an open source and a proprietary system. And to that end, the service enrichment model is provided to adapt, really, and that's sort of the key of it. So just to clear up for anyone who's not already familiar, you're probably familiar, you just don't realize that you are. Software as a service is a model that software is provided to users. It's a license model, so you're not buying it like you might in the 90s on a pack of discs and installing them on a machine somewhere. It's in the cloud, as another sort of buzz term that gets thrown around with SaaS a lot. And that refers to freeing your users, your IT team, your developers, if you have them, if you don't have them, even better, freeing you up from handling IT infrastructure. It gives the ability to access anywhere. And from a philosophical standpoint, from the way that a software as a service business operates, they're service driven because the success of their clients, the success of their customers is their success, right? Retention is a huge part of a software as a service business. So they're inspired to perform on a services level. So things like Salesforce, Akamai, if you use Gmail, you're already using a software as a service, albeit a free one. But Google applies, obviously, the software as a service model to just about everything that they do. So when you're going to look for a CMS, there's kind of 5 major components you want to consider, 5 things that you want to stick to when you're looking at and evaluating a CMS. So obviously your marketing goal. So how deeply do you want to go with digital marketing? Where do you want to start? Where do you want to end up? What does your timeline look like? To support that, what kind of functionality do you need? Do you need an email provider? Do you need a landing page optimization tool? Do you need CRM integration? Where does this tool fit in your existing infrastructure and marketing ecosystem? And that'll give you an idea of how much money you're going to spend. You're going to look at your budget. Those 3 things obviously are all very closely tied together, but something that people often forget is how well is the tool going to fit with the human element of your business? If you've got expertise in-house, you want to get a tool that's going to play to that expertise. And then the last thing, and this is something that I think a lot of folks take for granted, both that it exists and that it's high quality, because it's not always across the board priority for software companies, especially. So the support structure that's available to you, evaluating that is a huge piece of whether you're going to have ongoing success with whatever software you choose, whatever CMS you end up with. So let's talk a little bit about who each of these types of CMS is for. So if you're looking at whether a proprietary system is going to be a fit for you, you're looking at an on-premise installation, you're looking at an enterprise solution, something that's a big piece of well-developed, ready-to-go code. Make sure, first of all, that your requirements are there, that you actually need something this big because it's going to cost, right? You're looking at $20K a year and up for most proprietary kind of heavy lifting systems, which is great. They're fantastic systems, but make sure that you're spending money on something that's the right size for you. You're going to need probably an IT department with a certain degree of expertise in this sort of thing. The technology that goes into building, installing, and maintaining it is often the responsibility, especially in an on-premise situation, the responsibility of the customer. You may have an upgrade budget available as part of your agreement with a proprietary software developer, but ultimately you're still kind of responsible for making it go. And you need to have that dedicated user base, right? Don't license a piece of software that your users aren't going to engage with. So get that buy-in from the people who are making the content. Make sure that they like what they're going to be using. So, ultimately a proprietary system is it's a powerful solution, but the question is whether or not, you're going to be able to leverage all of it. Something to keep in mind for proprietary for sure. Now, on the flip side, if you're looking at an open source solution, because I think, in every analysis of a CMS tool, people start looking at open source as an option because, it is inexpensive, and that lower initial budget, I mean, hey, it's free, right? Well, so it's a mistake, I think, to look at open source as free. Now, technically, sure, the software itself you don't have to pay for, but you need a budget for development or for an agency or someone to develop internal expertise. If you have the money to hire someone, then great, right? You're going to have an expert. You're going to have someone who can build and manage this open source installation for you, but you do need that expertise there, whether it's internal or external. It's going to be a good fit for you if you're looking for freedom, if you're looking for modularity. You got a bunch of different things that you want to do, and you don't want to buy into a set package, and the budget and expertise to make it go. And then on the human side, just like proprietary, you kind of need a team of self-starters. You need people who are interested in learning a tool and who want to become masters of that tool. If you propose an open source solution and your marketing team all kind of rolls their eyes and groans about having to learn a new thing, either you need to look at a different solution or you need to look at a different marketing team. So, it's a question about open source as a DIY solution, right? If you're looking to roll up your sleeves and get dirty and make something for yourself, open source is a great approach. If you want to look at it in another way, and to draw kind of maybe a bit of clumsy analogy, proprietary, you can look at it as an iPhone, right? It's solid, it's built, and Apple makes iOS to work a certain way. And if you like that way, the way they do mobile operations, you're good to go, right? You don't have to ask any more questions. Open source is a little bit more like an Android platform. You have to choose the hardware you want to run it on. You got to pick. You don't get one text messaging app, you get 6, and you choose the one that works for you. So, think about how techy you want to get with it, how much you want to hack the system to work the way that you want, and decide between those two. But that's traditionally been the model, right? Where you look at those two as your options and you pick one. But again, Marqui, we're gonna throw a monkey wrench in that process and say that you have a third option, and service-enriched CMS is that third option. So for service-enriched CMS, what you really want to be looking at is an organization that's looking to grow, to change, that desire to be different than you are today. Service-enriched CMS will really help you with that. As far as budget goes, a mid-sized budget, like being willing to dedicate a certain amount of cash to making it work, is there, but certainly not the level you would have to engage with a big proprietary system. Now, this range that I gave, I'm sure that our sales guys are watching this and groaning at my liberty I'm taking. But this is a good starting range. Now, it'll depend because, again, we talked a little bit before about modularity. It'll depend. A service-enriched CMS will provide exactly what you need. And so there is a little bit more run-up time in terms of deciding what that looks like before you can get a price on that model. But what you'll end up with is a tool that's tailored to you with the stability of a long-running system and can be used by a mixed team. Now, you can have experts, you can have non-technical users, and they can all engage the software in a meaningful way. And ultimately, what you're looking at with a service-enriched CMS is not just a software tool, but a team, a vendor that can provide that extra support, that can provide service enrichment by way of a bunch of different add-on services that are attached to the software, but not necessarily reliant on it completely. I'll talk a little bit about what that service offering is going to look like. So at Marqui, the service-enriched philosophy really encapsulates 3 major pieces. The middle being that CMS software. The platform is built to work a certain way, and the rest of the service enrichment philosophy applies to that software. Obviously, CMS is about software, and we recognize that. But to build on that, we have digital services, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But engaging Marqui as an organization rather than just as a software vendor, and then obviously training and support, because a tool is only as good as the training of the people who are using it. So those three major components kind of go into building what we consider a service-enriched or a service-focused philosophy. So CMS service integration, the way that services piece, that bubble on the left, the way that works is in three kind of major pieces itself. So strategic services, campaign execution, and then the training and support piece. So what I mean by strategic services, and you'll forgive the wall of text on this slide, but I'll sum it up in that it's strategic services that you can get from an agency, from a digital marketing firm, but tied specifically to that CMS platform. So you're not wondering if your license and your software are playing nice with the agency you're working with, because they're one organization. So if you're doing copy creation, if you're doing UX or UI design, campaign building from the ground up with that software integration piece, data analysis, multi-channel integration, all of that stuff should be available through your vendor, right? Having to deal with two different vendors means introducing a piece of software that a vendor might not be comfortable with or familiar with. And there's no marketing services vendor that's going to tell you, oh, I actually have no idea how to use this CMS. They're gonna try and work around that limitation, but you don't have to worry about it if you're engaging an organization that built the software that you're using. So look for, in a CMS, look for that strategic services component if it's something that you want, from the first party, from the people who made the software. Campaign execution itself, this is really organized for those either the smaller teams just getting started, or if you're a big team or very ambitious and you find that there's a deadline coming up, you got a time gap or an expertise gap, and you just really need to get something done. Having these execution services, and they can be as simple as content entry, right? If you're just looking for a team that can build you some pages as fast as humanly possible, that's where you can start. If you're looking for folks to execute more complex campaigns, building lead nurturing structures or overall longer term campaigns, being able to go to the vendor that built the software means that you're paying less because they're the experts, right? Where a third party might take extra time to build something because they have to learn how first. Engaging a vendor in a services way is going to help you get the most bang for your buck, right? Because that training time is gone. And so, ultimately, that training and support should be there for your users as well. So if you find that you're engaging in the services piece, you're constantly getting your vendor, you're paying them to build you new pages, you might as well not have a CMS in the first place, right? You want to have a good, healthy mix. So when you're looking at buying a CMS, consider the training piece and the support piece as integrated into your support and service plan. It should be part of the process. Often you'll hear this referred to as onboarding. So ask, right? When you're in that meeting with your CMS vendor, say, what is your onboarding process look like? When can I expect my users to be up and running? What additional training is there? Who's providing the training? If I add a new user, how do you train them? Are there additional costs for future training? Is it on-site? Is it on the web? Be prepared to ask questions about that, because while it's easy to get wrapped up in the project component of a new CMS installation, you're looking forward to getting those keys in the ignition and taking them for a test drive. Keep in mind that there's going to be a bunch of different people theoretically driving your CMS, and you want to make sure that those users are not just adequately prepared, but expertly prepared when the day comes to turn over the keys, right? So don't forget this when it comes time, and ask about how it integrates into general services from the user side. So, I talked a little bit about that SaaS model earlier on, and the fact that a service-enriched CMS really advantages that model by using a modular function of the software, which reflects in a flexible license, right? Like if you're buying a proprietary license to a piece of software, often, you get package A, B, or C. But if you want sort of to make your own menu, there needs to be a flexibility at the technology level to allow that. So you're not paying any extra. You're paying exactly what you need on that license. And as you grow, you can add additional tools, right? You can add in email, you can add in marketing automation, you can add in lead nurturing, and your license will change year to year to reflect what you're actually using. The flip side of paying too much for something you're not using is being restricted in what you can use. So, ask about this. Ask about the license and modularity in the software. Make sure that they go hand in hand. They're both an important piece of choosing a piece of software. And then ultimately, is the service offering of the organization that you're going with, of your vendor, are they integrated? Because an integrated service offering and technology platform give you some real benefits right out of the get-go. Integration saves time. Obviously, we talked about that a little bit. Reduce cost for training and support if you're looking at training new users. And ultimately, it's about building that relationship with the vendor. So every time you have a problem, you have a goal you need met, you can pick up the phone and call one person. You want to feel like your vendor is a part of your team. If you're not on a first name basis with your CMS vendor, then you're missing out, because that kind of relationship exists, and it should be what you're striving for ultimately with a content management system. So once you've chosen a CMS, we'll jump forward, right? We'll look at, let's say you've chosen a CMS and you've launched your website, you launched some landing pages, you're good to go, right? You're having this healthy integration with your vendor, and it feels good. But once you want to start to expand, you want to look at the best ways to integrate that expansion into your CMS. So maybe you're looking to start doing email campaigns. You want to drive back to some of those landing pages. You've got a print piece or a series of banner or PPC ads that you want to track on your website. You want analytics built into that CMS. Or your sales team wants to get involved, right? You're in charge of marketing, and your sales guys are saying, we want to know more about the lead process. We want to feed back into that marketing piece. So you're looking at a CRM to integrate with your CMS, a customer relationship management tool. So a well-designed CMS, whether it's an open source or a proprietary solution, obviously if it's a service-enriched system, it's going to have these features built in. Or if not directly built in, you're going to be able to integrate quickly and easily. It's not going to cost a lot. It's not going to take a lot of time. You can say, okay, this is the tool we're going with. The CMS should have an API to plug into it. And most modern content management systems will, right? You want integration to feel like part of the process. And so obviously the easiest way to do this is find a CMS like Marqui that has these features built right in. So you're not leaving the system. It is a task within that content management platform. If you're having to save your work, go to another platform, export a spreadsheet, bring it back to your CMS and do all of that work, you're adding hours to the day, and you're devaluing your employees, right? You're devaluing your team. And on the team side, you want to get the most done in the least amount of time. So integration at a software level with those tools, being able to expand your digital marketing without wasting a bunch more time, obviously is a big piece and something to be considered when you're evaluating what platform you want to go with. So I talked a bit at the beginning about the way that we market to our webinar attendees. So before we go to questions, and I know I promised to keep this one nice and short, so we're coming up on the 30-minute mark. So what you can see here, this is just a nice quick flow chart. That big orange arrow is going to show you what's coming up next for you. So because you attended the webinar, you're going to get a follow-up email, and we've entered you into a lead nurturing program. So, we'll invite you to sign up for our newsletter, give you some blog highlights, invite you to come watch some demo videos that we have on our site, and ultimately, we'd really love to get you in a live demo of the Marqui software. If this webinar has sparked a fire in your brain about how Marqui might be able to work for you, you'll have that opportunity. Obviously, you can come visit our website. You can contact us directly at any time. But this is what the follow-up looks like. We're all about transparency. We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to see, what's up and coming. So expect to hear from us again soon.